Hey, make sure to like and subscribe. It's Wednesday, it's in May, and I don't know, it's like the 8th or something like that. We're going to read more about kids making choices. State tests are done. We finally don't have to worry about that anymore. Back to normal schedule tomorrow. And let's see. Hopefully you no longer have Post-it note on outside front cover, because I'd have to make fun of you if you did. You can put it on the inside. Hopefully you've also written your information on the inside of the book without spelling my name wrong, so I'd have to make fun of you for it. And again, I will be going to Costco and seeing what they have, so just giving you an idea. For those of you who have points, you have till next week for that one. And then I don't think we have anyone in here. Oh, no, Sam, you took tests because you were here on that day, so I think we're good to go. But anyone who was absent Monday, I'm going to have you finish test on tomorrow. And we did talky thing with you guys, and we got to a whole bunch of reading things with you guys. So let's get back to reading. What is a plainclothes cop?
Like an undercover.
That's the undercover cop. And then I think we got to his $3 beating. Where?
You didn't get beat
Yeah,
up
we got to that.
$3 is
And
like
how much would that be today?
like $60.
$90.
Between 60 and 90, depending on if you think Cokes cost $2 to $3. I know it's not with me. And then, we did talk about hippies with you guys.
Yeah,
the pot smokers that say we should change the environment.
Yes, people who care about stuff. That's so old. Who cares about
I know,
things
right?
like that? And then we've not gotten to the next part yet.
Yeah, that's kind of
And then I left you a gift on your desk.
Oh, thanks.
I know. That's the
Happy
best gift
birthday,
ever.
Carmen.
Yeah, Alright. Now we get to pick up with you guys. We made it all the way to page 13.
Only 13
We don't care, bro.
It says,
I'm
let's see.
sorry, Gabe, forgive me.
Eminem. So the Eminem they're talking about is not the white boy rapper Eminem, but it's going to be a kid by the name. He's a 13-year-old hippie that they like to hang out with. So he's that kind of person. Let's go look for Eminem, Mark said abruptly, and we left. It was dark outside and seemed a little chilly. This was probably because school had just started. It always seems like fall when school starts, even if it's hot out. Charlie's bar was on a real crummy street with a lot of other bars whose bartenders kicked us out when we strolled in. Had a movie house, a drugstore, and a second-hand clothes store that always had a sign in the window saying, "We buy almost anything." And from the looks of their clothes, they did. When my old lady went into the hospital, we got so low on money that I bought some clothes there. It's pretty lousy having to buy used clothes. Two things. Do you guys know who his old lady is?
His mom.
Yeah, it's just a way of saying his mom. And when they're talking about the secondhand store, this is their way of meaning like Goodwill.
A thrift store.
Yeah, thrift store, Goodwill. Nowadays, going to the thrift store or Goodwill is like a cool place to go. Back when I was doing my teacher shopping there. We found Eminem in the drugstore reading Newsweek, which shows what a weird kid he was, since there were plenty of skin mags and things to read. Alright, a little kid like him shouldn't be reading that junk, I know, but he should at least want to. So Eminem, this kid they're meeting, he's 13, he's a hippie, and...
A 13-year-old hippie?
13-year-old hippie, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they're talking about that. We got to this with you guys. We did. We talked about
Yeah,
the fact that Brian looks like the big guy. So, this is what he reads for fun. It's like a magazine, news magazine, but...
Does that lady have?
And so, I have no idea. But that's what they're talking about. This kid, this 13-year-old, like, he's really smart, but he's, like, reading stuff like this for fun. So that's why they're giving him a hard time about, like, what 13-year-old reads those things for fun? Hey, Charlie said you was looking for us. Mark greeted him. Eminem looked up. Yeah, and how are you guys doing? Eminem was the most serious guy I knew. He always had this wide-eyed, intent, trusting look on his face, but sometimes he smiled. And when he did, it was really great. He was an awful nice kid, even if he was a little strange. He had big gray eyes, the kind you see on war orphan posters, and charcoal-colored hair down past his ears and down to his eyebrows. I'm going to have to stop a couple times in this paragraph because there's a whole bunch of things to show you. When they talk about war orphan posters, I don't know how often you guys actually watch like actual TV, not like TV on your phone. They have these things called commercials.
Whoa.
And they sometimes have like where you can donate money to help kids in other countries. And they'll usually put kids on the commercials like these big eyes, like if you donate money, then I get
Trying to guilt trip me.
Exactly. So as they're saying that Eminem naturally has these giant eyes like that, where he's like looks at it and he's like blinky, blinky, and he has like big, adorable eyes.
Using kids to go.
Let's see if we got to that. Oh, then they're also going to talk about. I'll go ahead and show you now. One, they're going to talk about the fact that he goes around barefoot because he's a hippie.
Barefoot.
But then he also wears moccasins, which like these are the things. Oh no, look, moccasins.
Aren't those like Native American things?
Yeah, and so like these are what he ends up wearing. It's like around all the time because he went barefoot until we find out his dad made fun of him and said you have to wear shoes. So he started wearing like these kind of shoes, like what the Native Americans would wear. He also wears an army jacket, even though he believes in peace. Do you know what word we learned back during short stories?
Irony.
Why is it ironic?
Because he likes peace, but he's wearing a.
And so that was the thing that the hippies would do, just to like bring your attention to it. They would wear like an army jacket, but then wear like a giant peace symbol on it, because they were like, I don't believe in war. I don't know. Hippies. They were so hippie-ish. There you go. Now let's see. Hair down past his ears and down to his eyebrows. So long hair like this hippie. He probably would have grown a beard, except 13 was too young for it. He always wore an old army jacket that was too big for him and then went barefoot, even after it started getting cold. Then his father got fed up with it and Eminem got a pair of moccasins. He had a metal peace symbol hanging around his neck on a piece of rawhide string, and he got his nickname from his addiction to M&Ms, the kind of chocolate candy that melts in your mouth, not in your hand. For years, I'd never seen Eminem without a bag of that candy. I don't know how he ate those things all day long, day after day. If I did that, my face would break out like nothing you've ever seen. I'm sorry. You want an M&M? He held out a bag toward us. I shook my head, but Mark took one just to be polite, since he didn't like sweet stuff. You wanted to see us for something? Mark reminded him. Yeah, I did, but I forgot what for. He was like that, real absent-minded. My sister's home, he added as an afterthought. No kidding, asked Mark tactfully, thumbing through a bad magazine. Oh, which one? Eminem had 1 million brothers and sisters, most of them younger. Remember, you can't have your feet up if you're in struggle time. That's for kids who have points that they have no anything. Silly kid. All of his brothers and sisters looked alike, and it was really funny to see him out somewhere with 4 or 5 little carbon copies. Dark hair, big serious eyes, hanging all over him. If I had to be a babysitter day and night, I'd lose my temper and kill one of those brats. But then, Eminem never lost his temper. My older sister, Kathy, you know. Yeah, I remember, I said. Only, I didn't remember too well. So, where's she been? She went to a private school last year in the summer. She's been staying with my aunt. She had to come home, though, because she ran out of money. She paid for it all with her own bread. That's slang for money. Good job. Must be smart, I said. I couldn't remember what she looked like. I never paid any attention to her. So is she as smart as you? No, Eminem said, still reading. He wasn't bragging. He was telling the truth. He's just a very honest kid. Hey, let's go over to the bowling alley, Mark suggested. The drugstore wasn't exactly jumping with action. It was a school night, and nobody was hanging around. Hey, you come too, Eminem. It was a long walk to the bowling alley, and I wished for the 100th time I had a car. I had to walk everywhere I went. As if he'd read my mind, which he was in the habit of doing, Mark said, I could hotwire us a car. That's a bad thing to do, Eminem said, taking something that doesn't belong to you. It ain't stealing, Mark said. It's borrowing. Yeah, well, you're on probation now for borrowing, so I don't think it's such a great idea. 2 things I want to bring up. One, do you guys know what hot wiring is?
Yeah.
What's hot wiring?
Like you like
A hot wire.
Like you wire it to start it.
Nicely done. Why would you need to hotwire a car?
You don't got no keys.
Typically, it's because you have no keys for it, and typically you don't have keys for a car that you don't own. Now, it's not always that way. My dad was a mechanic, and so one of his favorite things to do is he had a car that had no keys, and the only way that you could drive it was by hotwiring it, and his thought was it kept people from stealing his car. I thought it made it look trashy and embarrassed me in front of my friends, but that's how parents are. And so apparently, Mark, the guy that's on the front cover to the right, is really good at hot wiring cars, but he got caught and he's now on probation. Do you know what probation is?
When you're basically on watch by the police, you're like on strike one or like strike two.
There you go.
There's this guy in our neighborhood. I saw him fishing. He has an ankle. He has like an ankle thing on it.
There you go. That's probably the person on probation.
I still talk to him. Me and him are chill though.
There's nothing wrong with it. Some of us have only
No, brother, he's nice to me though. Me and Finn, yeah, we fish with him sometimes. Yeah.
You guys might even be around someone right now who's been on probation at one point in their life.
It's you.
So it's not a thing to judge people on. Things happen. But here's where probation is where you normally, it's where instead of going to jail, they say you get to go home, but you have to check in like every week with a police officer to like talk about your life and to make sure you're not making poor choices, like talking to strange little kids at fishing spots and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's gonna go get on me.
No, but he's still chill though.
I don't know. Most people are. Just give them a chance. Just because someone got arrested doesn't make them a bad person.
Exactly.
Mark could hotwire anything, and ever since he was 12 years old, he'd hotwired cars and driven them. He'd never had an accident, but he finally got caught at it, so now, once a week, he had to go downtown on his school lunch hour to see his probation officer and tell him how he was never going to steal cars anymore. I'd been worried at first, afraid they were going to take Mark and put him in a boys' home, since he wasn't really my brother and didn't have a family. I was worried about Mark being locked up. I didn't need to. Mark always came through everything untouched, unworried, and hiccup, unaffected. Real quick, with Mark and his hot wiring, he doesn't steal them to like take the car and sell it. He uses it more like Uber. When he doesn't have a way to get somewhere, he would just go out to a parking lot, hot wire the car, drive around, do his errands, and then return the car and put everything back where it was. And so he doesn't do it to be evil, and he's never actually gotten into a wreck. He just does it before we had Uber. You would just hop into a car and take it. Is it right? No, but he still did it anyway. Okay, Mark shrugged. Don't get shook, Brian. Brian, Eminem said suddenly, were you named after the Lord? What? I said, stunned. For a minute, I thought he meant God. Lord Brian, were you named after him? The poor kid had Byron and Brian mixed up. I decided to string him along. This is Lord Byron. He's a poet from a long time ago. But their names are spelled really close to each other. Yeah, I was. Was there a Lord Brian? Mark said. Hey, that's kind of cool. Wait, I guess it's cool. What'd this guy do anyway? Oh, I can't tell you in front of the kid, I answered. Eminem shook his head. He wrote poetry. He wrote long old poems. You ought to write poetry, just to keep up the tradition of the Bryans. And you ought to keep your mouth shut, I replied, before I keep up the tradition of punching wise guys in the mouth. He thinks Eminem was being sassy to him, so that's why he threatened to punch him. Eminem's not sassy. Eminem's just a silly, gullible kid. Eminem looked up at me, and I realized from his hurt, puzzled look, he hadn't been trying to be smart. So I just punched him on the shoulder and said, okay, I'll write poetry. How's this? And I recited a dirty limerick I'd heard somewhere. It made him laugh and turn red at the same time. Mark thought I'd made it up and said, hey, that was pretty good. Can you just pop him off like that? I only shrugged and said, sometimes, because then I'd take credit whether or not it was really due to me. I was like that. I'd also lie if I really thought I could get away with it, especially to girls, like telling them I loved them and junk when I didn't. I had a rep as a lady killer, a hustler. I kept up the old Lord Byron tradition one way. Sometimes I'd get to feeling bad, thinking about how rotten I treated some of these chicks. But most of the time, it didn't even bother me. Nowadays, what term would we use to refer to him? Yeah, he is an absolute player and does not regret it at all. And as we're going to find out, most of the girls don't seem to mind. Eminem, old buddy, Mark was saying, putting his arm across Eminem's shoulders. I was wondering if you might be able to loan your best friend some money. You ain't my best friend, Eminem said with that disarming honesty. But how much do you want? $3? I got 50 cents. Eminem reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out a couple of quarters. Here. Forget it, I said. Me and Mark looked at each other and shook our heads. Eminem was unbelievable. No, that's okay. I'll get 50 cents again next week for babysitting. Is that all you get paid for watching all those kids? 50 cents? I couldn't get over it. 50 cents a week? I think it's enough. I don't mind taking care of the kids. Who's going to do it if I don't? Both my parents work, so they can't do it. Anyway, I like my family. When I get married, I'm going to have at least 9 or 10 kids. There goes the population explosion, Mark said. Well, now that your sister's home, she can do a lot of the babysitting, I said, trying to be helpful. Eminem could tell we thought he was crazy. Kathy's got a job after school. She can't help. I don't know what I have to do to convince you guys that I don't mind it. Okay. I'm convinced. I was also tired of the subject and got to worrying about how we were going to get $3 before tomorrow. Charlie didn't get his rough rep or his bar by being nice to people, and especially ones who couldn't pay their bills. By the time we got to the bowling alley, it was 10 o'clock. There weren't many people there. Mark and I watched a few games while Eminem stared into a package of M&Ms. I finally got bugged about it and asked him what in the Sam Hill was he doing. Take a look. He handed me the package, which was open at the top. Put it right up to your eye. I did. It looked like a bunch of candy. It's beautiful, ain't it? Asked Eminem. I mean, look at all the different colors. Yeah, I agreed, thinking, if I didn't know this kid better, I'd say he was high. Let me look, said Mark.
He is.
So, no, not yet. That comes later in the book.
No way.
Right now, he's just a young, innocent 13-year-old who just happens to be weird. Not every weird kid is high, or that would explain a lot in this class. I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about. That would be silly. See, yeah, I agree. Thinking, if I didn't know this kid better, I'd say he was high. Let me look, said Mark. So I handed him the package. Hey, this is groovy. Look at all the colors. He gave the candy back to Eminem, looked at me, and then shrugged. Eminem got up. I gotta go home now. I'll see you guys later. We just got here, Mark objected. Yeah, well, I just came along for the walk. Now I gotta go home. I watched him leave. The kid is weird. That's all there is to it. Mark lit up a cigarette, our last one, so we had to pass it back and forth. I know, but I still get a kick out of him. Come on, let's go catch up with him. There ain't nothing to do around here. Outside, I spotted Eminem at the corner. There were 3 guys trailing him. When you see something like that around here, you know right away somebody's about to get jumped. In this case, it was Eminem. Come on, Mark said, and we cut through an alley so as to come up behind those guys. 3 against 3. The odds would have been even, except that Eminem was one of those non-violent types who practiced what he preached, and me and Mark weren't carrying weapons. We slowed down to a walk when we came to the end of the alley. I could hear the voices of the 3 guys who were following Eminem, and I recognized one of them. Hey, Flower Child, turn around! They were taunting him, but Eminem just kept right on moving. It's Shepard, Mark whispered to me.
Hey, Curly Shepard.
There you go. Why do we know Curly Shepard?
Tim Shepard.
Yes, younger brother. He's the one that kept getting in jail. Like every time there was the rumble, they're like, "Where's Curly?" They're like, "He's in jail again." This is the kid they're talking about now. It's Shepard, Mark whispered to me. We were waiting at the end of the alley for them to come by. They didn't. They must have had Eminem up against the wall. We could hear him. Hey, hippie! Why don't you answer when you're spoken to? That ain't nice. Curly, why don't you leave me alone? Eminem sounded very patient. I moved over to the other side of the alley just in time to see Curly pull out a switchblade, reach over, and cut through the rawhide string on Eminem's piece metal. It fell to the ground. Eminem reached down to pick it up, and Curly brought his knee up abruptly and hit Eminem in the face. Me and Mark looked at each other, and Mark flashed me a grin. We both liked fights. We ran out and jumped on it, and the one we didn't get took off, which was a wise thing for him to do. Since we'd surprised him, it wasn't too hard to get them pinned. I had Curly Shepherd in a stranglehold with one arm, twisted behind his back, while Mark had the other guy pinned on the ground. "How'd you like a broken arm, Shepherd?" I said through gritted teeth, careful not to loosen my grip. His switchblade had fallen on the sidewalk, but I didn't know what all he might be carrying. He liked to play rough. "Okay, you proved your point. Let us go, Douglas." Douglas would be his last name, Brian Douglas. Curly said a few more things that I'm not going to repeat. He must have figured out who it was twisting his arm when he saw Mark. Me and Mark were always together. Curly had a special grudge against me anyway, and I used to go out with his sister. She says she broke up with me, which was the truth. But I was spreading it around that I broke up with her and was giving all kinds of cool reasons. Curly was a little dumb. He belonged to a gang led by his brother Tim, known as the Shepherd Gang. Really original. Tim was all right. At least he had a few brains. But I considered Curly a dumb hood. "Look, we didn't hurt him." A quick pause here. So Curly's sister is going to play a big role in this, because it turns out Curly's sister Angela and Brian used to be going out together, and then a thing happened and she breaks up with Brian. But remember, Brian's not a good person, so he starts telling everybody that he broke up with her, and then starts spreading rumors about what kind of girl she is. So that's why Curly doesn't like him, is because Brian was kind of a jerk to his sister. Not kind of. He was a huge jerk to his sister. That, of course, was a lie on his part, because Eminem was sitting there against the wall, and already his cheek was swelling up and turning purple. He was trying to tie the ends of the rawhide string together, and his hands were shaking. "Let him go," said Eminem. "I'm okay." I gave Curly's arm an extra twist for good measure, and then gave him a shove that almost sent him sprawling. Mark let the other guy up, but when he was almost to his feet, Mark gave him a good, swift kick. They left, cussing us out, partly in English and partly in sign language. If you don't know what that means, whether you're getting cussed out in sign language,
Gang sign.
no, he was telling him that they're number one. You're number one, and so that was the sign language that they were doing on that one. Yes. I don't
Don,
need
the
you.
white kind of looks like you, Landon.
No, he does not.
This one?
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
Brad,
going
Brad.
to white.
Like,
Oh, sorry, I was confused from our earlier conversation.
I'm black.
you're not.
You're all white.
Games
You're
we-
not black.
I'm black.
Again, we're
I can
also on
see it
video.
right now. You're white. Special boy.
Hey, what can I say? They know it too.
How about not that?
Just ask Juju in the
Repeatedly
mirror. They say
and
I'm black.
loudly.
They see you white.
They say I'm black.
Partly in English and partly in sign language about being number one.
Same color.
I thought the same thing. Mark was helping Eminem up. "Come on, kid, let's get you home." The whole side of Eminem's face was bruised, but he gave us one of his rare, wistful grins. "Thanks, you guys." Mark suddenly laughed. "Hey, look what I got!" He waved 3 $1 bills at me. "Where'd you get that?" I asked, although I knew good and well where he got it. Mark was very quick. Nobody had to teach him how to hotwire a car or to pick a pocket. "It was a donation," Mark said seriously, "for the cause." Now, this was an old joke, but Eminem fell for it. "What cause?" "'Cause we owe it to Charlie," Mark said, and Eminem almost laughed, but instead winced with pain. I was really feeling good. I could quit worrying about Charlie's beating us up. I know it's almost the end of the chapter, but we're going to stop there because there's another scene coming up that I'm going to save for then. So we'll stop there for today. Zuber, did you get to the Mike Chambers part yet?